The radar screen erupts with contacts. June 19, 1944. 10:00 hours. USS Lexington's Combat Information Center. Radar operator First Class James Peterson adjusts the gain on his SK air search radar. The phosphorescent screen shows returns that make his blood freeze. Range: 150 miles. Bearing: 260 degrees. Altitude: approximately 20,000 feet. Number of contacts: more than he can count quickly. 50, 70, maybe 100. Peterson presses the general quarters alarm and reaches for the intercom. Bridge: radar. Large raid, bearing 260. Range 150 miles. Angels 20. Multiple bogies. Estimate 50-plus aircraft inbound. The response is immediate. Task Force 58 has been waiting for this moment. 15 aircraft carriers, 956 aircraft, including 475 Grumman F6F Hellcat fighters, the most powerful naval striking force ever assembled. Admiral Ozawa's mobile fleet has launched Operation Ago, Japan's decisive counterattack. 9 carriers, 430 aircraft. Everything the Imperial Japanese Navy can muster for one knockout blow against the American invasion of Saipan. Admiral Soimu Toyoda declared before the battle, "The fate of the Empire rests on this one engagement. In 8 hours, that fate will be decided with brutal finality." Lieutenant Commander Charles Brewer climbs into his Hellcat aboard USS Essex, 6 Browning 50 caliber machine guns loaded, 400 rounds per gun, 2,400 rounds total, 212 pounds of armor protecting him. Self-sealing fuel tanks, bulletproof windscreen, 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney engine. The F6F Hellcat represents 3 years of Pacific combat lessons. American industrial engineering at its peak. Every weakness of earlier fighters corrected. Every advantage maximized. Survivability and firepower prioritized over maneuverability. His opponent flies the Mitsubishi A6M Zero. Half the Hellcat's weight. No armor, no self-sealing tanks. 2 20mm cannons with 60 rounds each. Beautiful, agile, deadly when flown by experts. But Japan's experts are dead. Killed at Coral Sea, Midway, Guadalcanal, the Solomons. The pilots Ozawa sends today average 200 hours training. Some have 100. Many have never fired their guns before combat. Some have performed fewer than 10 carrier landings. American pilots average 600 hours training. Extensive gunnery practice. Instrument flying. Navigation. Carrier operations refined to systematic perfection. The training gap is insurmountable. The technology gap is decisive. The industrial gap is overwhelming. Admiral Mark Mitcher issues his order. Launch all fighters. Within 12 minutes, 140 Hellcats are airborne and climbing. Fighter direction officers vector them toward the incoming raid. SK radar provides precise bearing and range. Combat information centers coordinate the intercept with mathematical precision. The Japanese formation flies in perfect parade order. Beautiful, disciplined, doomed. Lieutenant Commander Brewer's division reaches 25,000 feet. He spots the Japanese formation below. 60 aircraft in neat rows, like targets on a range. He keys his radio. Tally-ho. Bandits 2 o'clock low. Going in. The Hellcats roll into diving attacks. 6 machine guns per fighter, converging at 300 yards. Armor-piercing incendiary rounds at 850 per minute per gun. The sky fills with tracers. The first Zero explodes. Then another. Then 3 more. Within 90 seconds, 8 Japanese aircraft are falling toward the ocean in flames. By sunset, Japanese naval aviation will cease to exist. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot is about to earn its name through the most lopsided aerial massacre in naval history. The slaughter has begun. The moment radar detected the first wave, American fighter direction transformed defensive operations into systematic destruction. Fighter Direction Officer Lieutenant Joseph Edsall plotted intercept geometry on his status board. Enemy speed, 180 knots. Course, roughly 080 toward Task Force 58. Time to intercept, approximately 35 minutes if Hellcats launched immediately. The precision of aerial interception depended on accurate calculations, distance divided by closure rate, altitude advantage computed against climb performance, fuel management balanced against combat time over target. Every variable calculated, every advantage maximized. Admiral Mitch's response was immediate. Launch everything available. Within 12 minutes, 140 F6F Hellcats were airborne, climbing at 3,000 feet per minute, their powerful Pratt and Whitney engines giving crucial edge in race for altitude. Formation at 24,000 feet included 69 aircraft, 16 Zero fighters providing escort, 45 Yokosuka D 4Y duty dive bombers carrying 500-kilogram bombs, 8 Nakajima B-6N Jill torpedo bombers. Launch time from carrier decks to formation assembly, 23 minutes. Time to target, 90 minutes, cruising at 180 knots to conserve fuel. Lieutenant Commander Charles Brewer led 1st Division of Hellcats from USS Essex, climbing through 20,000 feet when radar operators called bogeys at 24,000, 30 miles out, and closing. Tally-ho! Bandits 2 o'clock high. The sky erupted with twisting contrails as Hellcats dove on Japanese formation. Brewer's first burst sent Zero spiraling down in flames. His wingman destroyed dive bomber with deflection shot that removed its right wing. Within 90 seconds, 8 Japanese aircraft were falling. The Hellcats' 650 caliber guns created lethal convergence at 300 yards, where all 6 streams intersected. At that range, 2-second burst delivered 170 rounds into target area roughly 6 feet diameter. Japanese aircraft designed without self-sealing fuel tanks or armor protection literally disintegrated under concentrated firepower. Lieutenant Stanley Swede from USS Yorktown described the engagement. They came in perfect formation like on parade. We hit them from above and behind, like shooting clay pigeons. They didn't even try to evade. The mathematical superiority was overwhelming. Each Hellcat carried 2,400 rounds, could fire continuously for nearly 3 minutes. The Zero's cannons carried 120 rounds total, 18 seconds of fire before empty. The first wave's destruction was systematic. Hellcats attacked in coordinated divisions, section leaders engaging, while wingmen provided cover. Into attack. The Japanese formation dissolved into chaos. Pilots breaking formation in desperate attempts to escape. Most never made it. By 1100 hours, first wave had been annihilated. 42 aircraft destroyed. 27 damaged and forced to return. Only 12 Japanese aircraft penetrated to attack positions. Of those, 7 were destroyed by anti-aircraft fire from battleship screen. The new proximity-fused shells, closely guarded secret, detonated near aircraft without requiring direct hits, creating lethal clouds of shrapnel. Japanese pilots called them the shells that think. The technology was decades ahead of anything Japan possessed. Radar operator Peterson watched his screen, first wave contacts disappearing. Then, at 11:07, new contacts appeared. Range, 120 miles. Bearing, W270. Count. Estimate 100 plus. The second wave was inbound. Larger than the first. The slaughter would continue. The F6F Hellcats' development story began with failure and blood. Early Pacific battles revealed American fighters were outmatched. The F4F Wildcat, brave little fighter that held the line at Coral Sea and Midway, was slower, less maneuverable than the Zero. Pilots survived through grit and tactics, not technical superiority. Grumman Aircraft Engineering Corporation analyzed combat reports systematically. Every engagement studied, every loss examined, every pilot debriefed. The data pointed to clear conclusions. American fighters needed more power, more protection, more firepower. The F6F design prioritized pilot survivability above all else. 212 pounds of armor plating protecting pilot, oil cooler, oil tank, bulletproof windscreen, 1.5 inches thick, capable of stopping 20mm cannon rounds, self-sealing fuel tanks, preventing catastrophic fires that killed so many Zero pilots. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine delivered 2,000 horsepower standard configuration, 2200 with water injection, 18 cylinders arranged in 2 rows, 2-stage supercharger maintaining power at altitude. This power plant drove 3-bladed Hamilton standard propeller with constant speed control. Maximum speed at 23,000 feet, 380 miles per hour. Rate of climb, 3,000 feet per minute. Service ceiling, 37,300 feet. The performance matched or exceeded any Japanese fighter while maintaining protective features. Armament was overwhelming. 6 Browning M250 caliber machine guns, each firing at 850 rounds per minute. 400 rounds per gun. Total ammunition load, 2,400 rounds. The guns harmonized to converge at 300 yards, creating concentrated impact zone. Compare this to Zero's armament. 2 20mm Type 99 cannons with 60 rounds each. 2 7.7mm machine guns with 680 rounds each. The cannons were powerful, but ammunition limited. 18 seconds of cannon fire before empty. The machine guns were ineffective against American armor. Japanese design philosophy sacrificed protection for performance. The A6M Zero weighed 6,025 pounds, loaded. Half the Hellcat's weight. This made it incredibly agile, could outturn any American fighter. But one bullet in the fuel tank meant fire. One bullet hitting the pilot meant death. No second chances. American philosophy accepted reduced maneuverability for survivability. Hellcat pilots returned from missions with dozens of bullet holes. Aircraft repaired overnight. Pilots flew again next day. Zero pilots hit once, often died. Aircraft destroyed. Irreplaceable pilot lost. The training gap compounded technical advantages. By June 1944, American naval aviation had become industrial process. Training bases in Florida, Texas, California produced 10,000 naval aviators annually. 600 hours minimum before carrier qualification. Instrument flying, navigation, gunnery, carrier operations, formation tactics, everything refined through systematic instruction. Japanese pilot training collapsed under weight of attrition. Pre-war pilots received 700 hours before joining operational units. By 1944, replacements averaged 200 hours. Some received as few as 100 before combat deployment. Navigation training minimal. Instrument flying almost non-existent. Formation flying rudimentary. Many Japanese pilots arriving at Operation Ago had never fired their guns in training. Ammunition too scarce. Some had performed fewer than 10 carrier landings The complex dance of approaching carrier at sea, catching a resting wire, these skills took practice. The institutional knowledge lost with veteran pilots could never be replaced. Further degraded training quality. Death spiral accelerating. Admiral Ozawa launched Operation AGO, knowing his pilots were inadequate. But orders were orders. The Empire's fate depended on stopping American advance. 430 aircraft, 9 carriers, everything Japan could muster. Against this task force, 58 deployed 475 Hellcats. Pilots averaging 600 hours training. Aircraft with overwhelming technical advantages. Radar providing 40 minutes warning of incoming raids. The mathematical outcome was predetermined. The SK Air Search Radar was revolution in naval warfare. Mounted on American carriers, the system could detect aircraft at 150 miles. This provided approximately 40 minutes warning of incoming raids. 40 minutes to launch fighters. Vector them to optimal intercept positions. Achieve altitude advantage before enemy arrived. Combat Information Centers integrated radar data with radio communications, creating real-time battle management system decades ahead of its time. Fighter direction officers worked in air-conditioned compartments, plotting boards, tracking every contact within 150 miles. Voice radio coordinating fighters with precision impossible before. The technology represented American industrial sophistication. Vacuum tubes manufactured to precise specifications, rotating antennas, scanning sky continuously. Cathode ray tubes displaying contacts as bright blips against phosphorescent screens. Every component mass-produced with quality control, ensuring reliability. Japanese forces lacked comparable systems. Their radar technology primitive. Detection ranges measured in miles rather than 100 miles. No fighter direction capability. Pilots flew to targets using navigation and visual sighting. Found American task forces by searching vast ocean. Often failed to find targets at all. The proximity fuse represented another technological leap, developed in utmost secrecy. These shells contained miniature radio transmitters. When shell passed near aircraft, radio waves reflected back, triggering detonation, creating lethal shrapnel cloud without requiring direct hit. Traditional anti-aircraft shells required setting fuse for specific altitude. If estimate was wrong, shell exploded harmlessly. Proximity fuse eliminated guesswork. Every shell that passed within lethal range detonated automatically. The effectiveness was devastating. Japanese pilots reported shells that knew where they were. Explosions appearing with uncanny accuracy, creating walls of shrapnel impossible to evade. The technology forced Japanese aircraft to attack from higher altitudes, reducing accuracy. Made surviving to reach targets almost impossible. The Hellcat's gun harmonization represented refined ballistic science. 6 machine guns mounted throughout fuselage. Each barrel angled slightly inward at 300 yards. All 6 streams converged into 6-foot circle. Maximum concentration of fire at optimal combat range. The 50 caliber Browning M2 machine gun was proven weapon. Reliable, powerful, each armor-piercing incendiary round could penetrate aircraft armor, ignite fuel, destroy engines. At 850 rounds per minute, devastating volume of fire, the ballistics were unforgiving. 2-second burst delivered 170 rounds into 6-foot circle. At 300 yards, no aircraft could survive this concentration. Japanese planes, lacking armor and self-sealing tanks, disintegrated. The self-sealing fuel tank technology prevented fires that killed so many Japanese pilots. Tank walls contained layers of rubber. When bullet penetrated, rubber swelled, sealing hole. Fuel couldn't leak. Fire couldn't start. Simple solution, saving countless lives. American armor protection reflected systematic analysis of combat wounds. 212 pounds positioned to protect pilot, oil systems, critical components. Not random placement but calculated protection of vulnerable areas identified through studying battle damage. The bulletproof windscreen was engineering marvel. 1.5 inches of laminated glass could stop 20mm cannon rounds. Visibility remained excellent. Weight was acceptable. The protection was absolute. Pilots flew knowing head-on attacks wouldn't kill them through windscreen. The discovery was systematic superiority at every level. Radar providing warning. Fighter direction achieving optimal positioning. Proximity fuses creating impenetrable defensive fire. Hellcat design prioritizing survivability. Training ensuring skill. Logistics providing unlimited ammunition and fuel. Japanese forces discovered they faced not just enemy, but entire system designed to destroy them. Every American advantage multiplied others. Radar detected early. Fighter direction vectored perfectly. Hellcats arrived with altitude advantage. Guns convergence was lethal. Armor kept pilots alive. Training made gunnery accurate. Proximity fuses prevented survivors reaching targets. The discovery was complete. Modern aerial warfare had become contest of systems rather than individual prowess. Superior technology, training, logistics created conditions where courage alone couldn't prevail. Japan discovered this truth June 19th. Cost was 400 aircraft and irreplaceable pilots. Lieutenant Alexander Vraciu's Hellcat suffered mechanical failure during launch. The supercharger stuck in low blower. Limiting speed to 300 miles per hour. Climb rate to half normal. By the time he reached altitude, his squadron mates had pulled ahead to engage second wave. Vraciu spotted Japanese formation below him. At least 50 aircraft, Yokosuka D-4Y duty dive bombers in perfect formation. They looked like sitting ducks. Despite mechanical disadvantage, he rolled into attack. His first target exploded immediately, the duty's bomb load detonating in massive fireball. He pulled, up, rolled inverted, dove again. Second bomber's tail separated from fuselage as 50 caliber rounds soared through aluminum structure. Third kill came as Vraciu climbed back for altitude. Judy crossed in front of him. Short burst set bomber's fuel tanks ablaze. Fourth victim never saw him coming. Attack from blind spot, below and behind. Tracers walking up fuselage until aircraft exploded. Fifth kill. Chasing Judy attempting low-altitude escape. Despite reduced speed, he closed to point-blank range and fired. Bomber cartwheeled into ocean. Sixth and final kill proved most spectacular. As Vraciu lined up shot, Judy's bomb load detonated from heat of burning fuel. Creating fireball, Vraciu flew through. 8 minutes. 6 dive bombers destroyed, using only 360 rounds of ammunition. His ordnance crew later calculated he'd fired less than 5 seconds total to achieve 6 kills. When he landed aboard Lexington, he held up 6 fingers to bridge where Admiral Mitchell watched. The photograph became iconic image of the war. Young pilot's triumph, captured in moment of joy. But Vraciu's rampage was replicated across entire battle space. Commander David McCampbell from USS Essex shot down 5 duty dive bombers in first sortie. After refueling and rearming, he launched again in afternoon. Destroyed 2 more Zeros over Guam. Day total: 7 victories. Lieutenant William Dean from USS Hornet led 20 Hellcats in high-side attack from Sun. Japanese fighters flying protective weave never saw Americans until tracers connected. Dean's first pass destroyed 3 Zeros in 15 seconds. His wingman killed 2 more. Ensign Wilbur Webb, flying his first combat mission from USS Hornet, encountered scattered remnants of third wave. In his after-action report, he wrote, "I couldn't believe they just flew straight and level while I shot them down. After third one exploded, I started feeling sorry for them. Then I remembered Pearl Harbor and kept shooting." Webb destroyed 6 aircraft in single engagement, becoming ace in day on his first combat mission. His experience wasn't unique. Dozens of pilots achieved multiple kills. The Japanese formations provided target-rich environment where skilled pilots with superior aircraft achieved devastating results. The reaction among Japanese pilots was terror and confusion. Pilot officer Yoshiro Shiroyama, one of 15 survivors from Zuikaku's air group, later testified, "We knew we were flying to our deaths when we saw wall of Hellcats waiting. Sky filled with tracers. Planes exploded everywhere. I saw at least 20 of our aircraft destroyed in less than minute." Lieutenant Commander Akira Tarue, leading torpedo bombers from Chiyoda, watched his entire squadron annihilated. Americans attacked from above, below, both sides simultaneously. We had no chance to maneuver or counterattack. My gunner was killed first pass. Controls shot away second pass. I crashed into sea and spent 6 hours in water before destroyer found me. The reaction was complete. American confidence, Japanese despair, technical superiority validated through combat. Training gap made manifest. The slaughter continuing through 4 waves. By day's end, 346 Japanese aircraft destroyed. American losses, 29. Kill ratio, 15-1. Japanese naval aviation would never recover. On paper, Japanese pilots should have performed better than they did. The Mitsubishi A6M Zero possessed superior maneuverability, could outturn any American fighter. Rate of roll was excellent. At certain altitudes and speeds, it could outclimb Hellcats. Maximum speed of 351 miles per hour was respectable for 1944. The Yokosuka D-4Y Judy dive bomber was Japan's newest aircraft. Maximum speed 339 miles per hour. Fast for dive bomber. Advanced design. Should have been formidable weapon. Japanese pilots inherited warrior tradition spanning centuries, samurai spirit, Bushido code, willingness to die for emperor. Cultural values emphasizing honor, courage, sacrifice. These intangibles should have counted for something. The contradiction was that none of it mattered. Superior maneuverability was useless when American pilots refused to dogfight. Hellcats used boom and zoom tactics. Dive from above, fire, extend away, using superior speed. The Zero's excellent roll rate meant nothing when Hellcats appeared from multiple directions simultaneously. Before Zero could roll toward one threat, another Hellcat was firing from different angle. Coordination defeated agility consistently. Cultural values emphasizing sacrifice actually degraded tactical effectiveness. Japanese pilots maintained formation while being slaughtered, following training, obeying doctrine. Dying in neat rows because breaking formation was shameful. American pilots scattered when necessary, regrouped, attacked again. Pragmatism trumped honor. The training contradiction was most fatal. Japanese pilots with 200 hours facing Americans with 600. Many Japanese pilots had never fired guns before combat. No ammunition for training. Some had performed fewer than 10 carrier landings, navigation training minimal. American pilots received extensive gunnery practice. Thousands of rounds fired at towed targets. Deflection shooting drilled until instinctive. They practiced carrier landings until routine. Instrument flying until capable in any weather. Formation tactics refined through hundreds of hours. The mechanical contradiction was equally stark. Japanese aircraft were beautiful examples of engineering, precise tolerances, careful craftsmanship, but no armor, no self-sealing tanks. Hit once, they burned. Pilots died. Irreplaceable experience lost. Hellcats were built like tanks. Armor everywhere. Self-sealing tanks. Bulletproof windscreens. Could absorb tremendous damage and still fly home. Pilots survived. Returned to combat. Accumulated experience. The survivability gap was insurmountable. The ammunition contradiction proved decisive. Zero's cannons powerful, but carried 120 rounds total. 18 seconds of fire before empty. Machine guns ineffective against American armor. Japanese pilots had to make every shot count. Couldn't afford ranging fire. Pressure degraded accuracy. Hellcats carried 2,400 rounds, nearly 3 minutes of continuous fire. Pilots could afford ranging shots, could engage multiple targets, could suppress Japanese formations with sustained fire. The psychological advantage was overwhelming. The industrial contradiction was final. American factories produced 12,275 Hellcats in just over 2 years. Peak production, 600 aircraft monthly. Japan couldn't replace combat losses. Each destroyed Zero was permanent loss. Logistics. American pilots never worried about fuel or ammunition. Unlimited supplies. Fresh aircraft if damaged. Complete maintenance support. Japanese pilots flew knowing reserves were exhausted, no replacements available. Each mission might be last because no more aircraft existed. The strategic contradiction was that Japan launched Operation Ago, knowing all these disadvantages existed. Admiral Ozawa understood his pilots were inadequate. His aircraft were inferior. His logistics were strained. But strategic situation demanded action. American invasion of Saipan threatened critical defensive perimeter. Doing nothing meant slow defeat. Attacking meant quick defeat. He chose quick defeat, hoping for miracle. The miracle never came. The contradictions between hope and reality resulted in 346 aircraft destroyed in single day. Japanese naval aviation effectively eliminated. The mathematical certainty of superior systems overwhelming inadequate ones was proven absolutely. The second wave of 128 aircraft launched from Japanese carriers Junyo, Hyo, and Ryuho at 0900 hours, 53 duty dive bombers, 27 Zero fighters, 48 torpedo bombers. Lieutenant Commander Kazuo Takahashi, leading the strike, had survived 18 combat missions, including Coral Sea and Eastern Solomons. He was rare, experienced pilot among mostly green replacements. Fighter direction vectored fresh cap fighters to intercept 60 miles from task force. Hellcats had altitude advantage, 28,000 feet versus Japanese at 19,000. Energy advantage in aerial combat translated directly to tactical superiority. American pilots owned the high ground. Lieutenant Alexander Vraciu's division was among those scrambled to meet second wave. His mechanical problems, supercharger stuck in low blower, limited his effectiveness, or should have. But the target-rich environment and Japanese tactical inflexibility meant even disadvantaged Hellcat could achieve spectacular results. The Japanese formation flew in perfect order. Precise spacing, neat rows. Beautiful formation flying, tactically suicidal, provided no mutual support. Made entire formation vulnerable to coordinated attacks. American pilots exploited this ruthlessly. Vraciu's 6 kills in 8 minutes exemplified systematic destruction. Each attack from optimal position, each burst precisely aimed. Minimal ammunition expended. Maximum efficiency achieved. This wasn't luck. This was training and superior aircraft perfectly applied. Across battle space, Other pilots achieved similar results. The second wave lost 97 aircraft. Hellcat pilots claimed 70 kills. Ship anti-aircraft guns destroyed another 20 proximity-fused shells, creating walls of shrapnel that shredded aircraft attempting to penetrate to targets. Only 31 Japanese aircraft survived to return to carriers. Most heavily damaged, many pilots wounded, aircraft barely airworthy. Some crashed, attempting to land. Others pushed overboard because damage was beyond repair. The effective loss rate approached 90%. The investigation after second wave revealed systematic failures in Japanese tactics, training, and equipment. Tactical doctrine emphasizing formation integrity resulted in aircraft being destroyed in groups. No dispersion, no evasive action. Following doctrine to death, training inadequacy showed in basic flight procedures. Many pilots couldn't maintain altitude during turns, stalled when attempting evasive maneuvers, failed to check 6 o'clock position for attackers. Basics that American training drilled constantly were absent in Japanese formations. Equipment failures compounded losses. Radios often didn't work. Flight leaders couldn't communicate warnings. Pilots flew blind, depending on visual signals easily missed in combat. No radar warning of approaching Hellcats. First indication of danger was tracers passing by. The ammunition quality was questionable. Some Japanese guns jammed. Others showed weak hits. Post-battle examination of captured ammunition revealed inconsistent powder charges. Quality control degraded by B-29 bombing of factories. Some rounds were duds. Others had excessive pressure. Pilots couldn't trust their weapons. American after-action reports were clinical. Number of aircraft engaged, number destroyed, ammunition expended. Time in combat. Every detail recorded. This data fed back to training programs. Successful tactics were taught, ineffective methods were discarded. Continuous improvement based on combat experience. Japanese after-action reports, when they existed, emphasized spiritual factors. Pilots showed insufficient warrior spirit. Greater determination was needed. Material disadvantages could be overcome through will. This denial of reality prevented systematic improvement. Same mistakes repeated in third and fourth waves. Already 1. 2 waves destroyed. Japanese losing 10 aircraft for every American loss. Strategic objective of disrupting Saipan invasion had failed completely. No American ships damaged, landing operations continuing uninterrupted. But 2 more waves would still be launched. Doctrine demanded it. Orders required it. Pilots would die because plans couldn't be changed mid-battle. American fighter direction represented revolutionary approach to aerial defense. Traditional naval doctrine positioned fighters in defensive circle around task force, waiting for enemy to arrive, reacting to attacks. This gave advantage to attackers who chose time and direction. Defenders were passive, reactive, predictable. Radar changed everything. Detecting enemy at 150 miles meant 40 minutes warning, time to launch fighters, vector them to optimal intercept positions, achieve altitude advantage, turn defense into offense before enemy arrived. Combat information centers became brains of aerial defense. Fighter direction officers working in air-conditioned compartments. Radar screens showing every contact within range, plotting boards tracking friendly and enemy aircraft, voice radio coordinating everything in real time. The theory was centralized control, maximizing defensive efficiency. Instead of fighters patrolling randomly, they were positioned precisely where needed. Radar detected raid, calculated heading, speed, altitude, plotted intercept geometry, vectored nearest fighters to optimal position. Fresh fighters rotated through combat zone continuously. Damaged aircraft returned. Others launched. Never-ending cycle. Japanese theory remained decentralized. Flight leaders navigated to targets. Found American fleet through visual search. No radar warning of defenders. No coordination with other strikes. Each wave operated independently. Could be defeated in detail. The coordination theory proved devastating for Japan. American fighter direction could mass fighters against each wave sequentially. Overwhelming numbers at point of contact. Then, repositioning for next wave. Japanese never faced total American fighter strength simultaneously, but each Japanese wave faced more fighters than it could handle. The altitude theory was equally important. American fighters climbed to 28,000 feet or higher. Japanese approached at 18 to 20,000. Americans owned the high ground, could dive from above, building speed, attack with energy advantage, extend away using superior speed. Japanese couldn't climb fast enough to counter. The ammunition management theory multiplied effectiveness. Fighters low on ammunition returned to carriers. Others with full loads rotated into combat. Battle space maintained continuous coverage. Japanese had no such flexibility. Once ammunition expended, pilots could only evade. Many were shot down while defenseless. The proximity fuse theory revolutionized anti-aircraft defense. Traditional shells required setting fuse for specific altitude. Proximity fuses eliminated guesswork. Every shell passing near aircraft detonated automatically, creating lethal shrapnel clouds. Ships could engage targets at any altitude without fuse adjustments. Greatly increased probability of hits. Japanese anti-aircraft theory remained primitive. Manual fuse setting. Estimated ranges. Visual tracking. Against fast-moving aircraft, effectiveness was minimal. American pilots barely noticed Japanese anti-aircraft fire. Proximity-fused American anti-aircraft fire was deadly. Japanese pilots feared approaching American task force more than engaging fighters. The training theory showed most dramatic disparity. American doctrine emphasized systematic instruction. 600 hours minimum. Gunnery practice until deflection shooting was instinctive. Carrier operations until routine. Instrument flying until capable in any weather. Formation tactics refined through hundreds of hours. Japanese training theory emphasized spiritual preparation over technical skill. Fewer hours. Minimal ammunition for gunnery. Limited carrier practice. The theory was warrior spirit could overcome material disadvantage. Combat proved this catastrophically wrong. The survivability theory defined aircraft design philosophy. American Hellcat prioritized pilot protection, armor, self-sealing tanks, bulletproof windscreen. Philosophy accepted reduced performance for increased survivability. Pilots returned from missions, accumulated experience, became more effective. Japanese Zero theory sacrificed protection for performance. Maneuverability paramount. Weight minimized. No armor. No self-sealing tanks. Hit once. Aircraft burned. Pilot died. Experience lost permanently. Each combat reduced Japanese effectiveness. Each American combat increased effectiveness. The theories collided. June 19th. Centralized fighter direction defeated decentralized operations. Altitude advantage overcame maneuverability. Ammunition. Abundance dominated ammunition scarcity. Proximity fuses created impenetrable defense. Training excellence overwhelmed spiritual emphasis. Survivability accumulated advantage. The outcome was inevitable once theories were applied. The Zero's failure wasn't accidental. It was designed into the aircraft from the beginning. 1937. Japanese Navy issues requirements for new carrier fighter. Must outmaneuver any existing fighter. Must have extreme range for escort missions. Must carry cannons for bomber destruction. Weight must be minimal for carrier operations. Mitsubishi's design team faced impossible constraints. Maneuverability required light weight. Range required large fuel capacity. Cannons added weight. Carrier operations demanded strong structure. These requirements conflicted fundamentally. The solution was eliminating everything, not directly supporting performance. No armor protecting pilot. Argument was armor, added weight, reduced performance. Shouldn't get hit. If hit, aircraft was lost anyway. Better to maximize maneuverability than protect against being hit. No self-sealing fuel tanks. Technology existed. Other nations used it. Japanese designers rejected it. Added weight. Reduced fuel capacity. Better to have more range than fire protection. Theory was pilots could extinguish small fires. Large fires destroyed aircraft regardless. This philosophy worked brilliantly early war. Against Chinese aircraft, flown by less trained pilots, Zero's maneuverability and range dominated. Few hits were taken. Fire risk was theoretical. Combat validated design choices. Zero became legend. Then Americans analyzed captured Zero, tested it thoroughly, found every weakness, developed tactics exploiting vulnerabilities. Boom and zoom attacks negated maneuverability advantage. Refused turning combat. Used superior speed and diving performance. Americans' hit and run tactics meant Zero couldn't force opponents into dogfights where it excelled. The deeper mystery was why Japan never corrected these flaws. Through 1944, Zero remained essentially unchanged. Same lack of armor. Same unprotected fuel tanks. Same vulnerabilities that were identified early war. Japanese designers knew the problems. Combat reports documented them extensively. Several factors prevented correction. Industrial capacity was limited. Redesigning Zero meant retooling factories, building prototypes, testing, production delays. Japan couldn't afford interruption in fighter production. Better to produce flawed aircraft than halt production for improvements. Pilot training emphasized working around weaknesses. Skilled pilots could compensate for lack of protection through superior flying. This worked when pilots were skilled. By 1944, skilled pilots were dead. Replacements lacked experience to compensate. Flew aircraft whose design assumed expertise they didn't possess. Cultural factors resisted admitting design flaws. Zero was source of national pride. Dominated early war. Symbol of Japanese military prowess. Acknowledging it was inferior would damage morale. Better to emphasize pilot spirit than admit material inadequacy. The Hellcat represented opposite philosophy. Started with assumption pilots would be hit, designed to protect them. Armor positioned based on analysis of combat damage. Self-sealing tanks prevented fires. Bulletproof windscreens stopped head-on attacks. Philosophy was bringing pilots home mattered more than maximum performance. The deeper mystery revealed itself through statistics. Zero pilots hit in combat usually died. Aircraft burned, crashed, pilot lost, experience gone forever. Each combat reduced Japanese effectiveness. Hellcat pilots hit in combat usually survived. Aircraft absorbed damage, returned to carrier. Repairs made overnight. Same pilot flew next day. Each combat increased experience level. This asymmetry was fundamental. Japan lost irreplaceable assets. America accumulated advantage. Over 3 years, gap widened exponentially. By June 1944, it was unbridgeable. The mystery solution was philosophy. Japanese design philosophy optimized for skilled pilots in first 6 months of war. American philosophy optimized for industrial war lasting years. When war lasted years and skilled pilots died, Japanese philosophy failed completely. American philosophy proved correct. The Zero at Philippine Sea was same aircraft from Pearl Harbor, same strengths, same weaknesses, but context had changed completely, facing inexperienced pilots against experienced Americans, fighting aircraft designed to survive versus aircraft designed for short war. The outcome was predetermined by design philosophies chosen years earlier. While Hellcats dominated the air battle, American submarines delivered crushing underwater attacks. USS Albacore, commanded by Lieutenant Commander James Blanchard, had been trailing Japanese fleet since dawn. Periscope observations provided Task Force 58 with warning of Japanese positions. But Blanchard's mission extended beyond reconnaissance. At 09:05, Albacore achieved firing position on carrier Taiho, Ozawa's flagship, newest and largest carrier in Japanese fleet. Commissioned just 3 months earlier, 64,000 tons, representing Japan's carrier aviation future, Blanchard fired 6 torpedoes, spread to maximize hit probability. 1 torpedo struck aviation fuel tanks. Damage seemed manageable initially. Crew assessed situation as non-critical. Carrier could continue operations. Aircraft launched and recovered normally. But volatile fuel vapors spread throughout ship. Ventilation systems carried fumes to every compartment. Someone, trying to help, started fans to clear vapors. Instead, the forced air spread fumes faster, created explosive atmosphere throughout vessel. At 14:32, spark ignited the vapors. Massive explosion tore Taiho apart. Armor-reinforced flight deck blown upward. Hull split. Ship flooded rapidly. Admiral Ozawa transferred his flag to cruiser Haguro, watched his flagship sink with 1,650 crew members, USS Kavala. On maiden war patrol under Lieutenant Commander Herman Kostler, detected carrier Shokaku at 1100 hours. Pearl Harbor veteran, survivor of Coral Sea and Santa Cruz, most famous carrier in Japanese fleet. After sinking of Akagi and Kaga at Midway, Kostler fired 6 torpedoes, 3 hits. Aviation fuel erupted through hangar deck. Bomb magazines detonated in sympathetic explosions. Firefighting efforts failed. Shokaku, burning from stem to stern, sank at 1,500 hours, with 1,272 men. The implications were staggering. 4 hours. 2 fleet carriers sunk. 60,000 tons eliminated. Combined with aerial massacre destroying 346 carrier aircraft, Japanese naval aviation suffered catastrophic and irreversible losses. The strategic implications transcended immediate battle. Japanese carriers would never again launch significant offensive operations. Mobile fleet, once most powerful carrier force outside American Navy, reduced to hollow shell. Aircraft complement destroyed. Experienced pilots killed. 2 most modern carriers sunk. Admiral Ozawa's mobile fleet entered battle with 9 carriers. 430 aircraft. Ended with 7 carriers. Fewer than 100 operational aircraft. Most pilots dead. 2 carriers sinking. Strategic objective of stopping Saipan invasion failed completely. American implications were opposite. Task Force 58 maintained full operational capability. Losses were minimal. 29 aircraft in combat, most pilots recovered. Industrial capacity meant losses replaced within days. Training pipeline guaranteed pilot replacements exceeded losses by large margins. The Marianas campaign implications became clear immediately. Without effective Japanese naval aviation, American amphibious operations faced minimal threat from air attack. Landings on Saipan, Tinian, Guam proceeded on schedule. Casualties were heavy from ground combat, but aerial threat was eliminated. The strategic bombing implications were immense. Marianas, once secured, became bases for B-29 superfortresses, range to Tokyo, 1,250 miles, round-trip feasible with bomb loads. Japanese homeland exposed to sustained strategic bombardment. November 1944. First B-29 raid from Saipan against Tokyo. Beginning of systematic destruction of Japanese cities and industry. March 1945 firebombing of Tokyo killed more than either atomic bomb. All made possible because Japanese naval aviation died June 19th. The submarine implications validated American doctrine. Unrestricted submarine warfare against Japanese shipping strangled island nations' economy. Fuel oils, raw materials, food, everything imported. Submarines cut those lifelines systematically. Japanese carriers sunk by. Submarines off Philippines demonstrated vulnerability even of major warships. The implications extended to final year of war. Japanese Navy attempted one final operation at Leyte Gulf, October 1944. Could muster only 108 aircraft from 6 carriers. Most shot down without achieving results. Carriers sacrificed as decoys. Empty shells of former power. After Leyte, Japanese carriers never again launched offensive operations. Remained in port. No fuel for operations, no aircraft to embark, no pilots to fly them. American submarines eventually sank most in port or shallow waters. Ignoble end for once proud fleet. The implications were final. June 19th marked end of Japanese naval aviation as effective force. Everything that followed was consequence of that day's destruction. Young American pilots, many in early 20s, had systematically destroyed entire generation of Japanese aviators. Lieutenant Junior Grade Charles Stimson, from USS Essex later, reflected, "It wasn't really combat. It was execution. They came at us in waves, and we shot them down in waves. I felt like I was at target range. After third kill, I started feeling guilty. Then I remembered what they did at Pearl Harbor and kept shooting." The psychological complexity was profound. These weren't hardened veterans. College students, months earlier, fraternity brothers, football players. Small-town kids who'd never seen violence. Now, killing with clinical efficiency. And they have a prosogen in SARS, the disconnection between civilian identity and warrior reality created internal conflicts many carried for life. Ensign Wilbur Webb, achieving ace status in his first combat mission, described the experience decades later. "I was 21 years old. I'd never been in a fight before. Suddenly I'm destroying aircraft with men inside. Real people dying. I could see them, their aircraft exploding, going down in flames. I did this 6 times in 20 minutes. Then I landed, and everyone was celebrating. I felt sick." But Japanese humanity was equally complex. Pilot Officer Yoshiro Shiroyama watched his squadron annihilated. "We knew we were flying to our deaths when we saw wall of Hellcats, sky filled with tracers. Planes exploded everywhere. I saw friends burning alive, screaming on radio, begging for help. No help existed. We were already dead, just hadn't crashed yet." Lieutenant Commander Akira Tarue survived by luck alone. "My gunner killed first pass. Controls shot away second pass. I crashed into ocean, expecting to die. Spent 6 hours in water before destroyer found me. Why did I survive when entire squadron died? No reason. Pure chance. That knowledge haunted me forever." The few experienced pilots understood their situation was hopeless. Lieutenant Sadamu Kamachi, ace with 12 victories, survived by immediately jettisoning bombs and fleeing at wavetop height. The young pilots followed training and maintained formation while being slaughtered. Those of us who survived did so by abandoning all tactical doctrine and running for lives, not honorable, but alive. Japanese pilot Saburo Sakai, observing from Iwo Jima, later wrote, June 19, 1944, was death of Japanese naval aviation. Carefully rebuilt air groups, 2 years in training, destroyed in single day. Americans had turned sky into slaughterhouse. Those who survived spoke of Hellcats everywhere. Above, below, behind, there was no escape. American carrier crews witnessed different humanity. Plane handlers pushed damaged aircraft overboard to clear decks. Mechanics worked 20-hour shifts, repairing battle damage. Ordnance crews loaded ammunition until hands bled. Everyone knew their work kept pilots alive. Failure meant friends died. Aviation machinist mate, first class, Roberto Martinez, from USS Lexington. We turned around aircraft in 12 minutes. Refuel, rearm, check engine, patch bullet holes, launch again. We worked 20 hours straight during battle. Nobody complained. We knew our pilots were counting on us. They came back alive because we did our jobs. Medical personnel faced different horrors. Flight surgeons treated wounded pilots between missions. Pharmacist mate second class James Thompson performed emergency surgery on pilot whose foot was nearly severed. He was in shock, bleeding everywhere. I had maybe 10 minutes before he died. Managed to save his life. He flew again 3 weeks later with prosthetic attachment on rudder pedal. That's the kind of men they were. Rescue operations showed humanity at its finest. Destroyer crews recovering pilots from water, sometimes under fire. Submarine crews surfacing to rescue downed aviators inside Japanese-controlled waters. Every American sailor understood. Bring the pilots home. They were family. For Japanese survivors, future held different challenges. Returning to carriers with decimated squadrons, facing questions about how they survived when others died. Cultural shame of failure. Many never flew combat again. Some requested transfer to kamikaze units. Honorable death preferred to living with shame. The humanity was complex, tragic, heroic, and profoundly human on both sides. Courage existed everywhere. Training and technology determined who lived and who died. The mathematics were inescapable, but young men on both sides faced death with dignity that transcended nationality. June 20th brought final act of the battle. American search planes located Ozawa's retreating fleet 275 miles west of Task Force 58. The distance presented critical decision for Admiral Mitchell. Launch strike at extreme range, knowing pilots would return after dark, or let Japanese escape. At 16:30, Mitchell gave the order. Launch everything. 216 American aircraft launched in fading light. 85 Hellcats. 77 dive bombers. 54 torpedo bombers. They would find Japanese fleet at sunset. Attack through desperate anti-aircraft fire. Then face challenge of returning in darkness. The strike sank carrier Hio and 2 fleet oilers. Damaged carriers Zuikaku and Chiyoda. Battleship Haruna. Cruiser Maya. Japanese combat air patrol, reduced to fewer than 35 operational fighters, offered minimal resistance. Another 65 Japanese aircraft were destroyed in this twilight battle. The return flight became epic of navigation and survival. Pilots flew through darkness with fuel gauges touching empty. Many had never attempted night carrier landings. Radio discipline broke down as desperate pilots called for bearings. At 20:45, first aircraft reached task force. Most were nearly out of fuel. Some were damaged. All pilots were exhausted from combat and long flight. Landing on pitching carrier deck in darkness is difficult under best conditions. Under these conditions, it seemed impossible. Mitchell made perhaps his most famous decision. Turn on the lights. Every ship in Task Force 58 illuminated. Searchlights pointed vertically. Running lights blazing. Flight decks outlined in lights. Destroyers fired star shells to mark fleet position. Cruisers turned on searchlights as beacons. The ocean lit up like city, guiding exhausted pilots home. The risk of submarine attack was accepted to save American air crews. Mitch's moral courage matched his tactical brilliance. He would rather risk his ships than lose his pilots. Aircraft landed on any available deck. Fuel-starved planes ditched alongside destroyers. Damaged aircraft crash-landed on carriers, crews pushing them overboard to clear decks for others still airborne. 80 aircraft were lost to fuel exhaustion or deck crashes, but aggressive rescue operations saved most crews. Destroyers assigned as plane guards recovered pilots, sometimes within minutes of ditching. Only 49 airmen from returning strike force were lost. Remarkable achievement given circumstances. The revelation was complete. Battle of Philippine Sea, christened Great Marianas Turkey Shoot by victorious American pilots, marked end of Japanese carrier aviation as effective force. 2 days, approximately 480 carrier and land-based aircraft destroyed. 3 fleet carriers sunk, 2 oilers lost. Most critically, over 445 aircrew killed, including most remaining experienced aviators. American losses: 29 aircraft in aerial combat and operational accidents. Most pilots recovered. 80 aircraft lost during night recovery. 49 aircrew killed from all causes. The kill ratio exceeded 15-1 in favor of American fighters. Individual pilots achieved remarkable scores, demonstrating superior training, aircraft, and tactics. Lieutenant Alexander Vraciu, 6 kills. Commander David McCampbell, 7 kills. Ensign Wilbur Webb, 6 kills in first combat mission. The strategic revelation transcended statistics. Japanese naval aviation would never recover. Admiral Ozawa's Operation A-Go assumed rough parity in pilot skill and aircraft performance. Instead, Japanese pilots encountered American aviators with superior training, flying superior aircraft, supported by superior radar and fighter direction. The technological and training gap had become unbridgeable. Marianas fell to American forces within weeks. B-29 superfortresses based on Saipan, Tinian, Guam would soon bring Japanese homeland under sustained strategic bombardment. Japanese naval aviation attempted one final operation at Leyte Gulf 4 months later. Could muster only 108 aircraft from 6 carriers. Most shot down without achieving significant results. Carriers themselves were sacrificed as decoys, empty shells of former power. After Leyte, Japanese carriers never again launched offensive operations. The revelation of June 19th was final. Industrial war had rules that couldn't be broken by courage or determination. Superior technology multiplied by mass production equals victory. Japan learned this truth at catastrophic cost. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot represented more than tactical victory. It demonstrated modern warfare had become contest of systems rather than individual courage. Superior technology, Grumman F6F Hellcat, with armor, self-sealing tanks, overwhelming firepower, versus Mitsubishi Zero, sacrificing protection for agility. Training excellence, American pilots averaging 600 hours versus Japanese averaging 200. Logistics, unlimited fuel and ammunition versus desperate scarcity. Intelligence, radar, providing 40 minutes warning versus flying blind into prepared defenses. These factors converged June 19th to create most lopsided aerial battle in naval history. 346 Japanese aircraft destroyed in 8 hours. 400 pilots killed. 2 fleet carriers sunk. Japanese naval aviation eliminated as effective force. The human dimension transcended statistics. Young American pilots, many in early 20s, systematically destroyed generation of Japanese aviators. Lieutenant Junior Grade Charles Stimson. It wasn't combat, it was execution. The psychological complexity of killing with clinical efficiency while barely old enough to vote. Japanese survivors faced opposite trauma. Pilot Officer Yoshiro Shiroyama. We knew we were flying to our deaths when we saw wall of Hellcats. Sky filled with tracers. Planes exploded everywhere. No escape. The horror of watching friends die, while helpless to save them or themselves. Admiral Mitchell's leadership proved decisive throughout. His decision to launch everything available against incoming raids maximized defensive firepower. His controversial choice to illuminate fleet for returning pilots demonstrated moral courage, risking submarine attack to save air crews. The decision defined his character and saved dozens of lives. The battle validated American approach to warfare. Industrial capacity, technological innovation, systematic training, centralized coordination. These factors created conditions where Japanese courage, while undeniable, couldn't overcome American advantages. The strategic implications were immediate and lasting. Marianas, once secured, became bases for B-29 strategic bombing. Japanese homeland exposed to sustained bombardment. March 1945, firebombing of Tokyo killed over 100,000. All made possible because Japanese naval aviation died June 19th. The atomic bombs ending the war flew from Tinian's North Field. Built on island captured because Japanese couldn't stop American invasion. The path from Philippine Sea to Tokyo Bay was direct and inevitable once carrier aviation was eliminated. The legacy endures in multiple forms. Aircraft museums display restored Hellcats and Zeros. Veterans' oral histories preserve first-hand accounts. Educational programs ensure lessons reach new generations. The battle proves that in modern warfare, systematic superiority determines outcomes. Production statistics told final story. America manufactured 12,275 Hellcats during war. Peak production, 600 monthly. Japan couldn't replace combat losses. Each destroyed Zero was permanent loss. Industrial gap was insurmountable. Fighter direction techniques developed for Turkey Shoot became foundation for modern air traffic control. Same principles of radar tracking, vectoring, centralized control now safely guide civilian flights. Proximity fuse technology pioneered in 1944 evolved into modern smart weapons. The emphasis on pilot survivability, seen in Hellcat, influenced all subsequent American military aircraft design. Every modern fighter incorporates extensive armor, redundant systems, escape mechanisms tracing heritage to Pacific War lessons. Veterans carried experiences throughout their lives. Alex Vraciu became test pilot, evaluating jets, defining next generation. David McCampbell commanded carrier air groups, retired as Navy's all-time leading ace with 34 victories. Many became airline captains, flying same Pacific routes they'd fought to secure. Japanese survivors faced different futures. Some became Buddhist monks seeking reconciliation. Others worked in post-war aviation industry, applying hard-learned lessons. A few wrote memoirs, preserving perspective of defeated. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot marked moment when technological superiority, training excellence, industrial capacity converged to create insurmountable advantage. Age of Samurai Aviator ended, replaced by era where systematic superiority determined outcomes. Lieutenant Alexander Vraciu's 6 fingers held up to Admiral Mitchell became enduring image. Young pilot's triumph captured in moment of joy. Behind gesture lay fuller truth. American systems had achieved what Japanese courage couldn't overcome. June 19, 1944, marked Japan's carrier aviation death and American naval aviation's absolute dominance.